Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 3. So excited that you're back. Thank you so much for watching our shows. Our hope is to always breathe life into everybody that watches this, to understand that people are people and people do people things. And we really want to inspire hope in all of you because we don't know anybody's situations that they're going through. And so when we can create hope for people, have our guests that have these actual experiences on how they overcame certain things, how they were a miracle in certain traumatic events. Um, Even some of these kingdom encounters that we get to have, it's always an inspiration for people. And so we hope that you gain that from our show. That is our hope for you, that you can truly overcome things that you might not have been able to do. The Apostle Paul talks about the race. And it's awesome when someone comes alongside you in your race, when you're tired, you wore out, you think the finish line is forever away, and they can help encourage you and run with you for a minute to speak life into you. And therefore, you can gain that momentum and continue the race better than if you didn't have that hope. And so today's guest is Hunter Fowler, a good friend of mine. And he is a a guy that was raised in church. He took a detour from church in his teenage years, thinking, I don't know about this God thing. And then he came back because of an encounter. You're going to want to hear about this encounter, and you're going to want to hear how it impacted his life in order for him to be where he's at right now. So I'm grateful that Hunter's on with us, and I'm excited to hear what he has to say. So come on, Hunter, let's go. And welcome to the Rob Redden Show.
Hey, it's good to be here, Rob.
Thanks, Hunter. Man, so first off, how you doing?
Doing good, man. Good. Glad to be here. Glad to get to talk with you and share testimony and share what God's got going on, man.
That is exciting because Hunter has an exciting project to announce at the end of this show. So I'm not going to get in the way of this anymore. So tell me, Hunter, how did you get involved with the church at an early age, and what led to the detour, and what brought you back?
Yeah, so I'm a seventh generation minister at this point. I work full time for a church as a youth pastor and a worship leader here in Northeast Ohio. And man, I grew up in church. I slept under pews. I had all those experiences that you think about when you think about a PK or a pastor's kid. I know all about them. I was the privileged little goofball that tried to get away with everything, stole the snacks from the kids' church, all of that fun stuff, man. So I grew up in it. I didn't know anything but it. When I got to my teenage years, honestly, I think that the reality was most of my faith and most of my relationship in the Lord was built on what I knew and what I knew of my family's beliefs, my family's systems, the way things worked and the way things were, just because that's who we were, even with my own kids, they ask me questions like, well, why did these kids get to do this and we get to do that? I say, because they're not you and you're mine. And this is what we do. We're Fowlers and this is what we do. And I think that that's it's nothing wrong with that parenting mindset at all. I use it myself. Oop, I lost my camera. There we go.
Yeah, you are.
But I use it myself. But the reality is, for me, it not having the rest of the basis of the reality in my mind, and it wasn't my parents' fault. It's just life. But I think I lived my religion. My faith was all based on what they did and how they thought and where they thought and what they believed. And I didn't know for myself. I didn't have that personal relationship with the Lord that went into every aspect of life. So my teenage years came around and friends asked questions, people out around me asked questions, and I didn't have the answers. And I didn't know what I believed, and I didn't know my thoughts, and that made me question a lot of things. So ultimately it led to me walking away from the Lord and just acting as if he wasn't there, which is very hard, to do when you grew up in church and you watched miracles all your life. I mean, signs, wonders, miracles were a common part of life for us. We saw people, in my dad's ministry, we saw people healed from AIDS. We saw people healed from cancer. We saw all kinds of stuff growing up. So to walk away from that in a teenage year, it was like there was all this justifying going on. Like, well, that was just this, and it was just chance, and it was just that. And I lived life away from the Lord for, I don't know, it must have been about 18 to 20 months. And in the middle
So
of that, just
with
all,
that,
yeah, go ahead.
with that, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No,
I
not at
want to
all.
go back to kind of like the part of your life that you can think back on. And was there a series of events of too many questions, kind of like that you couldn't answer? So therefore, you're like, well, is he really real?
Yeah, I
Even with
mean,
the justifications of seeing the miracles, because those encounters and stuff like that, it's amazing to witness those.
right. I mean, my dad always said, and it's just wisdom. The man with knowledge, or the man with an idea, is always held captive to the man with an experience. And when you have experience, it makes it very hard to argue. And in my case, that should have been reality, because, like I said, I saw many things from a young age that could only be explained by a supernatural God who is all powerful. But in my mind, it was just, um, arguments from friends for the most part. It really wasn't something crazy. It wasn't some like traumatic event. Didn't deal with like some crazy form of church hurt or anything like that. Nobody betrayed me or things like that. It was legitimately just conversations with friends, conversations with people in the world. I was a very, very active athlete. I played two sports and ran track. And a lot of my friends in those spaces were not the same in the mindset of faith as me, so they asked a lot of questions. And like I said, I just didn't, even though I had grown up in it, even though I'd been told to study it, even though I'd read it, um, I had not developed my own reality of who God was, and in my own relationship with him, that made those arguments null and void. So when the logic came before me, I didn't know how to justify or understand what the Bible had to say with it. I mean, it's like, as a youth pastor, question I hear all the time: why does good things happen to bad people? Well, nowadays we understand, because we've done the study, and we understand that love looks like giving people a choice. My kids, if I want to love my kids, I give them the choice to love me. And if I force somebody to love me, that's not love. That's not love. If I lock you in a basement and say, you have to love me, like, that's crazy. That's psychotic, And the same is true of a God who loves us, man. He loves us so much that he gives us a choice to love him or to live for him. And that freedom of choice gives us the opportunity to do things that are wrong. And those wrong actions have consequences. And that's why bad things happen to good people. Like, it's a simple thing now, but at, 10, 11, 12, 13, yeah, why does, if God is good, and if he loves us, why does he let people have diseases? Why does he let people die prematurely? All of those things cause questions that we should be able to, as mature believers, just walk through and work through. But as a young man, it was difficult for me.
So let me ask you this. So during that time, what was your relationship like with your dad?
I had very little contact with him. My parents are divorced. They've been divorced since I was a small child. And they're good with each other now. Everything's cordial. I
That's
have an awesome
perfect.
stepdad, and everybody is, and I have my dad is remarried as well. But everything's good in that regard. But man, it was an interesting season there, because obviously my dad and my mom are both people of faith, and they love the Lord. But there was just, circumstances and things that I just tried to get away from and tried to ignore. Go to church, act like it's there, whatever you had to do, to just have your own thought process, be an adult, be a man, or whatever. And really, it's just immaturity. But yeah, man, I mean, we didn't have much contact during that time. My dad came to a football game when we were in that season, and I was not happy to see him in the crowd. Um, and uh,
Oh,
and we had words afterwards. And since, like I said, we're in a great place now. God has restored so much.
praise God.
But yeah, it was a tough season, man. It was a weird season. It was really nothing else than deception against God, against who He was, and because of the deception and the lack of knowledge of who the Lord was, I was able to be deceived even to who my dad was,
Sure.
and what his heart was, and so. Not to say anybody does everything right. My dad definitely gets things wrong. My mom gets things wrong. I get things wrong, but it's a lot easier to recognize, people's faults are people's faults, and you just got to work through them and let the Lord work in them.
The thing is, I say it all the time: people are people, and people do people things.
Yep.
And I think that's where people get rolled up is when people accuse you of like, oh, well, you're a Christian, why are you doing all this, and why'd you make that decision? People don't realize that we have an enemy that wants to steal, kill, and destroy.
Right.
And you don't think the enemy knows or recognizes anointings, recognizes different behaviors and patterns that people have, to where if they are fully immersed in the Lord, then they're going to do some pretty amazing things.
Right.
So that's the thing that people need to really understand, and don't beat yourself up over. If you make a mistake, ask for forgiveness, repent, and you're good to go. And then try to stay away from the things that led you to that fall or led you to that decision to begin with, right? And so that's an amazing thing, because when you're a kid and you kind of like, missing a dad, I have broken childhood growing up, so I understand not having your dad around is really a big absence. And I believe culture has been trying so hard to minimize the role of a dad.
Yep.
And it's really a horrible thing. However, I believe we're on an uptick, and I believe Lord's instituting some things right now in the world today that's really highlighting just how important it is, not only just to have a dad in your life, but also your mom. And there's a reason why you have the teamwork into a family that makes it conducive. To me, it's all in a storybook. I didn't have that,
Yeah.
And so I say all that to say, you could, when I look at what you're telling me, it's easy, even if you're in church, it's easy to see how you as a young kid can be challenging thoughts, and how
Yeah.
the enemy can slowly get in there and start manipulating your thoughts, because the enemy likes to infuse thoughts into yours and make you feel like you thought of it.
Yep.
And question, because what happened with the serpent in the Garden of Eden? He
Yep.
questioned, and made both Adam and Eve like really like, is that really how it is?
Right. Is that what God said?
Yes, and not
Yeah.
understanding any of the dynamics in which they should have at that point. Okay, so you're not necessarily a rebellious kid. You're more of just, okay, this isn't working for me. I think I need to take a little
Yeah. I
break
think.
from this.
Yeah. I mean, it really wasn't even. It was just you don't know what you don't know, and the enemy messes with you. I think something different that we do with our children, that I don't think it was a mistake by my parents. I just think it was a different time and culture was different. um uh Something we do is we really try to answer the whys a lot, and walk through why God does what He does, why we do what we do. Just this last week, we went to leave for church, and my 5-year-old, almost 6-year-old son, he looks at me and he says, "Dad, I don't want to go to church again." We were leaving for Sunday night service, and obviously we're worship pastors, we're youth pastors, so we're there every time the doors are open. He says, "Son, I don't want to go to, or Dad, I don't want to go to church." I said, "Dad," I said, "Bud, what do you mean?" He says, I just don't want to. I'd rather do something else." I said, "Buddy, what do you think we go to church for?" And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "We go to church because the Lord is there. Bible says where two or three gather in His name, there He is in the midst." I said, I want to go where God is, don't you?" He said, "Huh." I said, "Furthermore, we don't go to church because we feel like it. We go to church because God asked us to not forsake the gathering of the people. He asked us to be a part of the body, a part of the church. So we go and we're a part of this thing because we want to give honor to God. We want to give honor to the one who saved us, the one who sent his son for us. I said, does that make sense, buddy? And he says, yeah, it does. Okay, I'm good now. And it's like, I know that's really simple and it's elementary, but it's just the truth of it is like, okay, with our kids, how can we have these conversations where if they do have questions, that one, they feel comfortable enough to ask us those questions,
Yes.
but two, that we don't look at them and go, oh, you're just a kid, you'll figure it out one day. But I can have that conversation even at 5, at 7, at 9, at whatever, that those kinds of questions, and we're hey son, I'm not afraid of that question, and neither is God. God's not afraid of your doubts. He's not afraid of your stuff. Even it was written in the word, like, God, I believe, but help my unbelief. How is that in the Bible if God's not okay with us questioning and asking about things? So I think that mindset shift and just being willing to have those conversations, it changes a whole lot. And for me, it was just, and it wasn't that my family wasn't willing to have those conversations. It's just, I didn't realize I could have them. I didn't realize I could have them. I didn't realize those were questions I could ask. Nobody's fault. It's just deception.
In a different time, as you said.
Yeah.
Wow, that's the thing is too, God is God.
Yeah.
He knows the end from the very beginning. There's nothing that can shock him like I didn't see that
Right.
one coming. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
and he's much bigger than people think, to where, yeah, his feelings can get hurt. He can definitely, there's a whole verse dedicated to saying Jesus wept.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's one of those things where God knows the end from the beginning. So therefore, he knows the decisions that you're going to make to be where he puts you,
Right.
and to be who he created you to be, and walk in that anointing.
Right.
All right. So you're a young man, you're kind of like breaking away, and you're just like, all right, enough of this. I'm going to go on my own, so to speak. What was that like for you?
I mean, it was teenage life, your typical American do dumb stuff teenager. Yeah, get involved with people you probably shouldn't be involved with, stay out too late, do stuff you shouldn't do. It wasn't crazy, it wasn't traumatic. It wasn't like I ended up in some wild, drug ring or, or something, out the wazoo. It was just teenage backslidden life, and it was complacent, and in most people's eyes it probably would have been just fine and happy. But it definitely wasn't the fulfillment of what God wanted for my life and for the fullness of what was going on. And in the middle of it, man, I had a family that was praying for me. I had friends that were praying for me. My dad actually met my wife's family, my now wife's family, during that season, and they all sat at a table. My wife, who was at the time, I guess she would have been 14, 15, I guess probably 15, and her family, her brothers, and we're all sitting at a table with my dad. And my dad asked and said, look, my son is not living for the Lord right now. Could you pray with me for him? And it's pretty amazing to know that it was literally, they sat down and prayed, and it might have, I think it was a week to 2 weeks from the time that happened, that I had the encounter that I had and came back to the Lord. And man, it's a wild thing to think, though, that it was my wife at that point in time, knowing and never having met me, knowing nothing about me, that the Lord had so orchestrated it to where even she would be involved with praying and interceding for the encounter to happen. And we believe, we teach that all the time with our kids. Like, look, you got somebody that you want to encounter the Lord, even if they're unwilling, intercede for them and let God do his thing, because we can open doors to opportunities for God to speak into their life, if we're willing to step into the throne room and intercede. So, like I said, 2 weeks later, I woke up in my room. It was, it had to have been 2, 3 in the morning. I had a street light outside the window of my room, like that you could see from the outside of my window, or I don't know if it's a street light or a backyard lamp or what it was. But regardless, there was light that always shone through my window. Even when my blinds were closed, you'd have light lines on the floor at 3 a.m. I never had to worry about having a night light to get up to go to the bathroom or anything like that. I could always see in my room. And I was in that room, and when I woke up at whatever time it was, 2, 3 in the morning, it was so dark that I could not see my hand in front of my face. And that was my first sign that something was weird. It's just so dark, like it was just, I mean, it's like being in a cave underground, like just so dark. And suddenly, in the midst of sitting there in my room, a burst of light happens, and this giant, it had to have been, I mean, as tall as the ceiling. So, giant being, and I know he's an angel, dropped through the roof. He's wearing military fatigues of all things. And he had a giant, the only way I can describe it is like an elephant gun strapped to his back in a drill sergeant's helmet or hat like that, that tight brimmed hat, drops through the ceiling of the room. And I understood immediately all the scriptures in the Bible where the angels say, "Don't fear," or "Do not be afraid," is the first thing they say constantly. I get it.
You
I
experienced
get
it.
it. I get it. I've been in fearful situations before. I have never been as afraid as I was the moment that angel dropped into my room.
Well, let me
I
ask you
thought,
this. Let me
yeah,
ask you this. Okay, first off, the burst of light.
hmm
Was it something that your eyes had to adjust? Because when you go from pure
yeah,
dark to light,
yeah,
typically you're like, oh, was it something
yeah.
like
I
that?
put my hands out like this that I can remember, and blocked and turned, and then was able to focus on what was going on.
Well,
Um,
second question.
yeah,
Did you recognize it immediately as an angel, or do you think it was a demon?
Yeah, it was very quick that I understood what was going on. It
Okay.
was very quick. He in a way radiated with light, and
Okay.
my understanding of what I understood of the word from my upbringing, I was like, I don't know what else to call this than that in my mind. I was doing the pinch yourself thing, like I'm dreaming or something, and it wasn't working.
So
uh,
tell me like exactly like take us in a cinematic viewpoint to where you're sitting there going, why is it so dark? Something's wrong. And all of a sudden, like light pops out of somewhere.
mhm,
Here comes a military dude as tall as your ceiling. You're tall as your ceiling with a huge gun looking
yep,
at you. Like,
yep.
what was going through your head in the aspect, if
I'm
you
gonna
can
be honest,
recall,
I didn't get much time to think because he dropped through the ceiling, and as soon as he dropped through the ceiling, he started yelling at me.
yelling?
Yeah, he started yelling at me, and to this day, man, there's very like, God speaks to me calmly a lot, but to this day, most of the time when I hear the Lord speak, when I get impressed of the Lord, um, it sounds something like, "Don't do that, dummy." Like, "Do this instead." It's very matter of fact when the Lord speaks with me, and I think it's probably just to do with my personality. You've spent enough time with me to know I'm pretty no nonsense in the sense that I just speak my mind, I'm direct. People accuse me of being a mean person pretty regularly, and it's a weird thing to be in a pastoral role, and you're just like, "Dude, what do you want?" Like, so I imagine it's just to do with the fact that the Lord knows me and knows that I'm going to respond just fine to it. But yeah, he dropped through the ceiling and he started yelling. He started telling me, I don't know how long he screamed. I just know it was a long time. But he just basically told me that the Lord had plans and purposes for my life and things that he wanted me to do, and dreams that he wanted me to accomplish. And in the midst of it, he was telling me that I had to be where I needed to be trained properly for what I was going to do, and that if I wasn't in position, that I would miss out on the purpose. So he told me that I needed to call my dad the next morning, and to call him and tell him that I was moving back, and that I was supposed to go home, to his place, and that I was supposed to go where he went and do what he did. So it was a interesting thing. I got up that next morning and made the calls, and the whole transition was a mess. I did not exit properly from my mom's. I won't get into all that. I made major mistakes in the way that I handled relationships and did things. But I was just so concerned about, doing what I'd heard the angel say and what I knew was the Lord's command, that I just did what I did as a teenager. I know now that when I move like that, and when the Lord says to do things, I have to operate with a form of diplomacy. I have to operate and think through the way that the Lord would handle it, not just what He would do, but how He would have me to accomplish it. So I handled some things wrong, but I moved back, and I told my dad I'm not going back to regular school when I get down there. I do not want to be enrolled in a public school or a private school. I want to do online schooling, and I want to go where you go and do what you do. and my dad was traveling a lot as an itinerant minister at that point. So it wasn't maybe 30 days later that I was getting on a plane with him to go speak at 3 different churches where he was going to speak. And the second church that we went and spoke at was where I serve today. And it was my wife's family's church, and it was where my wife and I met and started hanging out as friends. We didn't start dating or anything at that point. But yeah, we met and we hung out as friends, and her car, funny enough, her dad's car was in the shop when we got here, and her car was the car that was kept the cleanest, because she's a very clean person. So he borrowed her car for the week to drive us around while we were in town. And and so everywhere we went, she went, and we just hung out and had a good time, became good friends. But yeah, from that point on, coming back into the walk in my walk with the Lord, it was day in, day out. I'm gonna go and be my dad's armor bearer and be where he's at and figure out what it looks like. And
this was per instructions from the angel.
yeah,
Correct.
yeah. The angel told me I needed to get back where I could be trained so that I could understand the call and the purpose that he had for my life, and that it was going to be in that service that I was going to learn so much. And I did. Man, I did. That was our first post before we got married. We took over the youth ministry there in my dad's church in Orlando, Florida. And when we started the youth group, it was really kind of a starting point. When we started that youth group, there was like 4 kids in them. 2 of them were my sisters, and we were 18, and we had 2 17-year-olds in the group. So pastoring and youth pastoring somebody that's literally going to turn into an adult in the next 12 months, is a weird thing. Looking back on it, I don't know why we were allowed to do it, but God did. In year 2 of being a youth pastor, we did a camp for 35 students, and we rented a house, a vacation home with 35 students, and my wife and I. And that was it. There was no camp counselors. There was no support staff. There was no cooks or chefs. We just did it. And we cooked
Man,
with the kids. We ate with the kids. We cleaned with them, and we taught, and we did worship. And it was wild, man.
and
But
talk about preparation for you and your wife. And not knowing if you guys are gonna be married at the time, right? It was kind of one of those deals where
well,
you still.
by the time we did the camp, we were married. They wouldn't have
Oh,
let
you
us
were
do
okay.
that.
Okay.
But we got married at 20. So we led the youth group for about 2 years as dating, and then an engaged couple. And then when we got married, we were given like actual reins to do more,
Okay.
elaborate things like
Sure.
camps and retreats and all that stuff. Leading up to that, it was just Wednesday night service and doing those kinds of things.
Wow. So I mean, even before children, he put you in a place where you and your wife had to do that teamwork, chemistry type thing. And now,
Yeah.
I mean, has it been like a no hardship when it comes? Well, let me rephrase this.
No hardship would not be the term
Yeah,
I would describe.
there's always going to be something or another where the differences
Right.
of opinions. You know what I mean? But do you think it like helped you in preparation for your children now?
Absolutely. I think that my wife and I have been able to walk our marriage in a way that I think that a lot of people um, obviously can't, just because of job situations. We've both been full time in ministry for over a decade now, so we work together, we walk together. When we had our babies came to staff meeting with us. Our babies sat in the office with us. That's something that we're very privileged to have. And it definitely helped with the early years of child rearing. We had 3 kids under 3 at one point. We had a
Busy, very
we had
very
a
busy.
3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 1-year-old at one point, and it was nuts. It's amazing now. I'm glad God let it happen the way it did, because now their months are weird. So depending on what part of the year, they're 2 years or 1 year apart. I think
Sure.
they're 8, 7, and 5 right now, and it's a trip, man. It's really fun to be able to just play, and they're best of friends and everything. But yeah, man, I think that God letting us do what we did when it came to early life and youth ministry, when it came to being in ministry together, our marriage and our ability to handle our kids and do what we need to do has been extremely assisted by those years.
Let me ask you this. This is what I'm seeing
Yeah.
right now for you. So what you're doing, I believe, is what God has purposed for man and wife, husband and wife, husband and wife, since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
to be able to have your children with you at all times and able to parent them at any given moment, doing whatever
Right.
you're doing, and for them to for them to be raised with you guys in the sense of as you're growing spiritually and doing the things together, dude, that's going to be a book. That's going to be a how-to film for so many people that are going through their second marriage, going through the third, fourth marriage, or
Right.
just boyfriend and girlfriend having children. Because that's been such a thing that enemy's been going into families for so long and attacking the fabric of which God has created the foundation for in the very beginning. And that happened, Cain and Abel.
Right.
So what I'm seeing with you guys is that I think that's going to be a big deal for you too, is how you're modeling what that looks like now for others to see and duplicate before they even get married.
Right. Yeah, I believe that.
That's good stuff, man. I'm excited to see what that looks like when you guys put the production together. So, all right. So you have your kids with you at all times. That's great. It's not a burden. It's great.
Yeah, it's been wonderful.
And just to see just like you said, the conversation you have with your 5-year-old. I mean, that's that's precious to get him to think for himself at such an early age, instead of being so dependent on everybody and therefore never having any confidence in themselves to make a decision by themselves.
Right.
That's good. I think your no sugar type of communication can definitely be something that people can see of, because there's times where you need no nonsense and there's times where you need to coach people into certain things. But
absolutely,
man, that's awesome. So you're now with your wife in a church that was the second stop that the angel told you to go with your dad. And so we're seeing the circle of how he connected everything, because you were in the position where you needed to be in order to receive that next step, that next stage of life.
Yeah,
right?
no, if I'm not in that place traveling with my dad, I don't know my wife. I don't know who now is my father-in-law and mother-in-law. I don't our life is entirely different. It's amazing the way that God works. My father-in-law, he makes it into a song. I won't make it into a song right now, but he constantly says, if you'll be where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to do, you'll get what you're supposed to get. And he'll turn it into a song and all kinds of stuff. But it's just so true. I think that a lot of us look and go, okay, God, what are you doing in my life? And the Lord said, well, I've asked you to walk that direction. I've asked you to do that thing. I've asked you to change that habit. I've asked you to shift that mindset 1 billion times, and you haven't done it. So when you do that, you'll be where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to do, and then you'll get what you're supposed to get. And I think many times we think we're waiting on God, and God's really just waiting on us. He's waiting on us to get in line with what he wants us to do.
And that's the thing I was going to ask you a little earlier was when you were apart from God, I'm willing to bet that even though you did some goofy things, there were some people that you probably shouldn't have been with. Did you, now looking back, are you aware of the times that God was talking to you
100%.
about things like, okay, I'm gonna do this, but man, this right here, no, I'm probably not gonna do that.
100%.
Right?
Many times I was about to engage in something or be involved in something that was certainly not good for the longevity of my life. And many times my dad would call me out of nowhere and I wouldn't answer because I didn't want to talk, but his name would pop up on the caller ID of my phone and it would go, okay.
Want to hear a story? I got one for you. A guy goes into a bar, looks around and sees the bartender. He walks up to the bartender. He says, "Hey, I'll take your best drink while I wait on a ding." A ding? What does that even mean? Yeah, I'm doing this digital marketing, and I like it when I get dings just doing random things. Just like me getting out of the car to come in here. I got out of the car, and I heard a $900 ding. That still doesn't tell me anything. I started an online business where everything's automated. I work 2 hours a day. Now that I'm set up on automations, people see my product, then they buy it and goes from them right to my bank. Bada bing, bada boom. Just like that, I got a ding. Or in other words, A sale. Oh yeah? Well, how do I get into this action so I can have my own dings? Good question. All you gotta do, go to my website, enter in your email, you get all the questions answered that you formulating in your head there. And then you can get your own dings. Well, do you want your own dings? Comment ready in the comments below, and I'll send you my website. You can give me your email. We'll send you all the information that you want to know about it, and you can start getting your own dings. And you know the thing is, Hunter, I believe 100% God's always talking and always showing us things. It's just a matter of, are we available to listen in our thoughts?
Right.
Because in Jeremiah 29:11, he says, I know the thoughts I think towards you.
Right.
The thoughts of peace, not of evil, thoughts of a long life, thoughts of prosperity, whatever it may
Right.
be in that regard. And so when we're able to not run to the shiny things, not be distracted by the things that are just not good for you or not the path he wants you to be on, then we can find that time with him to where now he can download things into our thoughts.
Right.
If we understand that we want our thoughts to be those thoughts that he thinks toward us, if we can operate in that, we are exactly what he called us to be in our destiny.
Right.
And who he's created to be, so he can flow through us in the way he wants to flow through us without opposition from us to him.
You know, another version of that scripture, instead of saying the thoughts he thinks, it says the plans he has. And one of the things that I love and I teach and I talk to young people about all the time is the problem is not that that you're a bad person, that you're incapable. The problem is you're following your plan. And every time you make your own plan, it's a toss up. It's a possibility. There are people in the world that don't live with God and that don't serve God, that their plans have gone great and they're wealthy and they're happy and great. But there's a lot more people in the world that have lived according to their plans, and they look and they're begging for the weekend. They're addicted to substances. They're doing all kinds of things to cope with the life that they live in. And you know, that's not to judge anybody or say anything negative. It's just to say that, okay, look at the scripture. I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope in a future. Like when we look at that scripture, okay, if God's plans are that and my plans are a toss up, get rid of my plans, please. Like delete, get rid of them. Bye. I don't want them. I want whatever the plan that looks like God's is. And if that looks like running around in circles and trying to figure things out until I'm ready for the next stage, then so be it. If it looks like me growing and having to mature and go through life lesson after life lesson after life lesson until I figure it out, so be it. Because if he gives me something before I'm ready, I'm just going to fail anyway, you know?
Exactly.
If I give my 8-year-old the keys to my car and say, go drive, it's not going to end well. It's not going to end well. She might think that's going to be great, but it won't end well. So same thing for us in life. If we've got things that we want to do and God's called us to, let's let him tell us when we're ready to drive the car. Let's let him give us the keys when it's time.
Exactly, man, Hunter. Okay, so you are doing what you're doing. Your kids are being raised properly. You understand the blessings which you have. You and your wife are a great team. Before we get into what you're currently doing, I want to ask you, based off of what you went through, you know, there's tons of people either going through that right now, regardless of the age, or thinking about maybe taking off on their own course, or at a place where now that I'm here, how do I get back? How do I approach the people that I might have done wrong, et cetera, et cetera? How can you bless them with life of what you have encountered in the story in which you're walking out? How do they get back to that? How do they? I want them to understand that the option is very, very real. and the fruit can be either really good or really bad.
Right.
And so, what in a couple minutes would you give to those people in that position right now?
I just think the important thing that you have to remember is that God can be frustrated, God can be aggravated, God can be grieved, he can be upset even. The Bible even says he has moments where he's angry. But an angry God is not sitting there waiting to smite you because you made a mistake. He's not sitting there waiting to smite you because you questioned him. He's there with arms open, waiting for you to say, "Hey, I'm coming home." And the biggest lie of the enemy is to say that because you've done something wrong or because you've messed up, you now are incapable of connecting with God. You now are God doesn't want to connect with you, or that you should be afraid of connecting with God because he's going to hurt you or he's going to be mad at you or upset at you. Look, I have so many times where my kids do stuff that makes me wild angry. And it just happens. It's children, it's life. Um, but there's never been a time where any of them, and I can't ever think of a thing where they would do something that wouldn't make me want to have relationship with them and wouldn't make me want to hug them and love on them and care for them. And you know, the word says if your earthly father wouldn't give you bread if you asked for a stone, how much more would your heavenly father be there for you? So if I don't know what people's situations are with their dad or with their parents or with their kids, but I can tell you this, that love knows no end, and that it doesn't matter what you're going through or what you're thinking about. The best result you can get is from going to God and asking, going to people and asking. If you're estranged from family members, if you're not in relationship with people, if you messed it up and handled it the wrong way, the best result is go ask, take the opportunity. The worst thing that can happen is somebody could be like, I'm not up for this. And you know what? You didn't lose anything if that happens. But what you can gain is the relationship that you want, the relationship that you're looking for, the relationship you're supposed to have back, because you're willing to go and talk and have. Matthew 18 says, if you have aught with your brother, go to him. And so it's very important, I think, that we recognize that if I have aught with God, I go to him. If I have aught with Rob, I go to him. If I have aught with my family member or my friend, I go to them. And let's have that conversation. The world today has got us so convinced that conflict or that a difference of opinion means you have to hate somebody. If you're right, you can't interact with the left. If you're left, you can't interact with the right. If you're faith, you can't interact with those who aren't faith. Whatever it may be, the world tries to divide. He seeks to divide and conquer and make us feel disconnected. And the truth is that God wants us to be united. He wants us to be together, and that having relationship together, even if we have a difference of an opinion, is a lot easier than we think it is. It's a lot easier than it's been made out to. So go. That's the advice.
There
Go
you
be
go.
with him. If it's God, go talk to him. I promise you, he's waiting with arms wide open to receive you back.
And if it is family, a house cannot stand if it's divided. And
Yep.
so it might take some humble pie, but you also
Yep.
have to think, okay, how did I mess up in this? I'm going to offer that as a forgiveness. Please forgive me for doing these things. But
Yep.
also, you just love them where they're at and grow in
Right.
that.
Right.
Okay, so we have about 5 minutes left, and I appreciate you sharing that with people because I believe that's going to
Yeah.
bless some people, Hunter. So thank you. Now I want to hear about this project you got going, this exciting project, baby. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. So about 2.5 years ago now, I started having dreams. I can talk about it like this here because we're people of faith. I started having dreams about these stories and things that were really cool. And I was like, God, what are you doing with this? What is this? And he just encouraged me to be faithful and be creative and start working with it. I've been a part of Kingdom Warriors for a little while, helping with music and different things like that when we were doing the NFT launches. I wrote a couple of the NFT music pieces that are there, some of the lo-fi stuff that we put out.
Give
Uh,
people an understanding what Kingdom Warriors is, real quick.
Kingdom Warriors, the idea is to be like a God-focused and a God-centric Disney or something of that sort, where we will be releasing media and doing all kinds of projects that keeps God in the center of it and understands who He is. So I started working with KW years back because I think that's a good thing. Obviously, out of it, long story short, out of it, I've started a brand that is associated with KW, but we're kind of really just pushing what we can push and doing the thing called Challengers of the Realm. And it's a story, it's a story, it's a brand, it's a card game, it's all kinds of stuff. I've got a novel that I've written, a 70,000 word novel. That's just the intro to the story of it, and we've got about 5,000, maybe 6,000 hours of development on our own trading card game about it, 150 unique pieces of individual art. The game plays in somewhere in the world of Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering and things like that. And the idea is just really simple. For those of people of faith who might not understand it, because you go to the website and you're not going to see us talking about the apostles or talking about a Jesus card or anything of that sort. It's very intentionally not a Christian thing. We are designing something that's for everybody that you can connect with, whether you have faith or don't have faith. I am a person of faith. I love the Lord. And point blank, I wanted something that I could enjoy and create and grow in. I'm creative, so I've made something, and that's what we've been working with. And so now it's turning into stories. It's turning into all kinds of stuff. And man, we're excited about it. The website's been scrolling on the bottom for more info and stuff you can learn about the game. There's a how to play our game video. If you're on that website, you can go over to the shop, and if they're still available, there are collector's editions decks that we put out a couple of months ago. We're getting ready to go to print with our first run of cards, the first edition of cards. And later this year, we're hoping to go to Kickstarter, if not early next year, for a full scale launch of the card game. We're going to be at PAX East this year. We're going to be at Lexicon this year. We're aiming to be at a couple other conferences this year to be able to show the game off. And we even got the game up on Tabletop Simulator. So hit Rob up and let him know you need to connect with me, and if you are a Tabletop Simulator player, we can do that way too. But yeah, I mean, honestly, the vision is to build something like what Tolkien built with Lord of the Rings, to build something like what C.S. Lewis built with the Chronicles of Narnia, is really to just build a world where we can tell amazing stories. And for those people of faith, look, the commitment I can make to you is we're not going to do anything opposing. We're gonna stay in line with our values. We're gonna stay in line with what I believe, because it'd be very difficult for me to make something that doesn't come from the essence of who I am. But at the same time, I do want us to know that we're not making something that's intended to be Christian. So if you're looking to be preached at by a project, this is not the one. We want to build something, make something where families can come together and be entertained and have a good time and not have to compromise their faith. And that's ultimately the goal, the mission. The idea is let's build something epic. Let's build something fun. Let's tell crazy cool stories that make us all argue about the lore. And if I can get people arguing about our lore and our stuff the way that people argue back and forth about what Tolkien wrote in Lord of the Rings, cool. That's awesome to me, because I love that. I grew up a super Star Wars guy, Lord of the Rings guy. I've watched every one of those movies a million times, read all the books, played all the games. We do it all. And man, I love just escaping into wild, cool worlds. And I think that's what we're building with Challengers. So hopefully that explains the best I can in 4.5 minutes. But man, yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And I want to edify Hunter right now, because this guy is like, he has such a tenacity when he gets something in his spirit and he knows he's supposed to do it, just like you heard in the testimony of his teenage years after getting totally yelled at by an angel. He's on it. He's like a dog that found the rabbit or whatever. He's going after it. I mean, there's no distracting that, and so I think Hunter is such a wonderful guy, and he's a very caring person. He genuinely cares about other people. And so with this game he's doing, that there's 100% involved in every card that was made and every decision that he's making right now in order to move forth with this project. And I have no doubt that we're going to see it on shelves. Exactly where we're going to see it, I don't know, but you're going to see it. And so Hunter, man, I am so grateful for you. And thank you so much for your time. And appreciate you sharing with the audience about you. Absolutely. And I'm hoping that people get encouraged and they can stop in their tracks before going on a route they don't really need to be going on. So, all right. Well, that sums this one up. Episode 3 in the books, baby. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, man. Well, you have a great day and be blessed.
You too. We'll talk soon.